Well, now it is my privilege to introduce our teacher for tonight. I have had the opportunity to work alongside, and now he's actually my boss, Jim Mellado. He's the president of the Willow Creek Association, and he and his wife, Leanne, live here in the area with their 3 children, and Jimmy is a great friend of mine, and I so respect this man, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. You know how it is when you have a friend and you know something about their life and you know their story and you want other people to hear it. That's how I have felt all week long. Like, I can't wait for the people of Willow to hear the story Jimmy has to tell and what he has learned from a profound experience in his life. It took me a long time in the meetings that we would have on a weekly basis. Bill Hybels would sometimes joke and call him Santiago, and I thought it was just a joke. And then I found out that's really his given name. Jimmy was born in El Salvador, and Santiago is the name for James. Who knew, you know? But so we call him Jimmy. But I'd like to ask you to extend a warm welcome to Santiago Mellado as he comes to speak.
Well, that was. Thanks, Nance. I think that's the first time I've been introduced as Santiago. Well, today's a bit of a surreal day for me. If a year ago God would have given me 1,000,000 opportunities to try to guess what would have transpired in my life this last year, what I'm going to talk to you about today would have never made the list. Likely it would have included things like enjoying another year of life with my wife and kids, celebrating birthdays, watching my kids play sports, traveling road trips, tackling tough issues at work, enjoying another year of community with my small group, all those things. But my son and I, almost dying, I can assure you, would have never made the list. It was July 16th, last summer. My family and I were on vacation in Baja California, just south of the border. We were visiting extended family because we wanted our kids to get connected with their roots. Some of them had not ever visited or even met some of these folks. And all week long, my son Davey had been wanting to go to the beach and swim, but it seemed like the beach time was always getting kind of the short end of the deal and edged out by all the adult time on our trip. So that day, finally, it was going to happen. We were going to do some shopping and then head out to the beach. It was a beautiful sunny day. My parents, Aunt Rita, cousin Susie, and Andre, along with their kids and all of my family, were strolling through downtown Ensenada, browsing from store to store. Well, Davey had waited patiently and gone along with the hopes that, all right, soon enough, we're going to get to the beach, right? But as the day went on, the beach time kept getting the short end of the deal. Squeezed out again, and that was not a very good thing. There was a well-populated beach just south of Ensenada, but it required us going in the opposite direction of our ultimate destination for the evening, so we decided to head back north to Tijuana, possibly stopping by a beach along the way. There were several. Well, just before reaching Rosarito, we saw a beach. It was a little deserted. Access to it was a little difficult, but we went forward. There was a lifeguard stand, but there was no lifeguard. But when we saw the waves crashing on the beach, some of these concerns were overcome by the excitement of having a great time with my son body surfing. After all, we were only going to play around the shallow end for a few minutes only to get back in the car and head up to Tijuana. I wanted to have some fun. I wanted my son to have some fun after having endured a whole boring day of following adults strolling from store to store. Not exactly on the high end of like the excitement list for a 13-year-old kid who loves adventure, or actually a 44-year-old man who gets that debilitating mall feeling every time you even mention the word shopping. It's just... And so, against a small voice that said, "Those waves look a little bit odd, a little bit turbulent," Davey and I jumped in the cold water, screaming at the top of our lungs, splashing each other with water and catching a wave or two as we tried to body surf. The waves were coming in one right after the other. It was exhilarating. The rest of the family was content to just watch and stroll on the beach, picking up seashells and stones that looked interesting. Everybody was having a great time. But then I noticed Davey getting a layer of waves deeper into the ocean. And I got a bit nervous, but I thought, you know what, he'll catch the next wave in, and no, there won't be a problem. We had our fun with a few waves. Maybe it's time to go home. And the water was freezing cold. But before I realized what was going on, Davey was moving quite rapidly now away from the beach into the ocean. And not only Davey, but me as well. With every second, it seems that we were being swept away another 10 yards. Nervousness turned into real concern. I decided to swim toward Davy to get us turned around. And so I started swimming with the current to try to catch up to him. By the time I got close to him, I could tell he already noticed that something was wrong. I think he saw it in my eyes. The water was really choppy and swift and powerful. And I saw panic in his eyes as he struggled to keep afloat. And just then another swell of water went over him and his head went under. And then when he came up, his head was just on the surface of the water, just barely above the water. And when he just kind of mumbled the words out, "I can't help." And I can't describe to you the chilling terror that gripped me as I heard those words. Real concern turned into absolute bridled panic. I had to get to him. And when I got close enough, he reached out and he grabbed my forearm right here. We were at least together now. But as Davy clung to me, he stopped swimming and we both went underwater. When we came up again, gasping for air, I quickly looked at the beach in total disbelief at how far we had been taken. I doubted anyone would hear us if we yelled. A million thoughts raced through my mind, and I concluded that Davy and I didn't have the strength to return, and no one on shore could help us or reach us in time. We were about to die, perhaps 5 or 10 minutes at the most, but there was no way we were getting back. Of that, I was certain. What happened in the next few seconds would save our lives. I'll get back to that in a few minutes. It was a strange deal when we got back to shore. Unspeakable relief mixed with disbelief and shock at what had just happened. A terrible ordeal was over, or so we thought. When I reached the beach, I immediately collapsed and started vomiting. But that was no big deal to me. I'd worked out a whole bunch of times, pushing my body to the limit, and so throwing up was not a big deal. I remember telling my dad, "Man, Dad, this feels like 2 decathlons in one." I said, "Just let me lay down a while, I'll be fine." But I wasn't. I've never been in shock before, but I think I was heading in that direction. I was just so freezing cold. My peripheral vision started to get dark. It almost kind of turned into a tunnel with 3 fuzzballs of heads looking down on me at the time. And I thought, whoa, this can't be good. So I closed my eyes and just started concentrating. Don't let go. Don't lose consciousness. 5 minutes turned into 10, 10 into 20, and I wasn't getting better. It was starting to get dark and a little colder. And finally, my dad said, we got to get you to a doctor. And so they carried me, took me to the van, and we headed back to town. When the doctor checked me out, he took my vitals, checked my blood sugar, and said that I'd be all right with a little bit of rest. It might take a while for my body to recover from the trauma of it all, but I should be fine. No reason to think otherwise. But something bad was silently taking place inside of my body, undetected. The next morning, I tried to eat breakfast, but I couldn't keep it down 10 minutes. I didn't want to ruin the family's vacation time, so I kept telling myself I just needed a little bit more rest time, that I would soon be okay. Let's keep the vacation agenda going. Over the next 3 days, I tried to rest as much as possible, but I was still having a hard time keeping food down. By the time we were scheduled to fly back to Chicago, I began to notice that I was starting to swell in my midsection, and I was starting to feel increasingly uncomfortable. I explained to my wife, it felt like a basketball full of water just got shoved inside of my stomach. It hurt to move too quickly. My wife, Leanne, made an appointment with our family practitioner for the next morning as soon as we returned to Chicago. And when we arrived at the doctor's office, the person that was attending us took one look at me and said, "You know what? You need to go to the emergency room right now. What you have, we can't help you with here." I remember thinking, man, how bad do I look? We immediately went to the emergency room where they did a full blood test this time. And the doctor sat down with us to review the results with quiet calm, like if he was just describing the weather, said, "Well, everything here looks good, except for your creatinine level, which is at 12.7. It should actually be below 1.7. It appears you are experiencing acute renal failure, and so we've scheduled you for dialysis right away. We'll need to implant a catheter in your neck so we can get started as soon as possible." And I remember thinking, my head was just spinning, trying to absorb what he was saying. I said, whoa. I came in for a stomach ache. What are you telling me?